Did the Cleveland Browns just accidentally reveal that Dillon Gabriel might be on his way out? Because the more you listen to what's coming out of Cleveland right now, the more it starts to feel like something big is brewing behind the scenes. And if you're a Browns fan, this situation might be a lot bigger than people realized just a few months ago. Dillon Gabriel was being talked about like he was part of the future. Some insiders even suggested he could be competing for real opportunities inside that quarterback room. But now, the conversation has completely shifted, and the rumors are getting louder by the day. Reports and discussions coming from Cleveland radio and analysts are starting to hint at something interesting. The Browns may be quietly building trade interest around Gabriel, and when you look closely at the moves they've been making lately, it starts to make a lot more sense, because here's the thing.
Why do you think the Browns are going out of their way to mention Dillon Gabriel? Could there be something else like Aaron thinks maybe they want to try and deal him?
I think that's how you manufacture a trade, manufacture interest, is keep talking up a player. Andrew Berry did it at the Combine. I don't think there was any intent on Schweitzer mentioning him, Dillon Gabriel first. He's so new to the team, the new coordinator. That's just the first name that popped into his head. Maybe he had just been watching film before that press conference, and the last guy he looked at was Dillon Gabriel, for all we know. So I wouldn't read too much.
The Browns recently moved draft assets around, including a 5th-round pick in a previous deal. And now people around the league are starting to speculate that Cleveland might be trying to recover that pick. And the easiest way to do that, moving a quarterback asset. Which suddenly brings us right back to Dillon Gabriel. Now some analysts are already asking the question out loud. Was all that recent praise about Gabriel actually genuine? Or was it the classic NFL move of boosting a player's value before making a trade? And if that's the case, then the Browns might be playing a much bigger chess game than fans realize. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Because while these rumors are heating up, the Browns quarterback room is also becoming one of the most confusing situations in the entire NFL. And when you look at the names involved, the injuries, the speculation, and the comments coming from insiders, it starts to paint a picture that could completely change what Cleveland's plan really is. So the big question right now is simple. Is Dillon Gabriel actually part of the Browns' future? Or is Cleveland quietly preparing to send him somewhere else?
And it looked like there is troubling news coming out about Dillon Gabriel. And just like I told y'all the other day, bruh, it's about to get real for good old Dillon boy. Y'all, for this one here, we got to go all the way up to Cleveland. Let's get it. Let's go. Now, I did a video a few days ago explaining to y'all my theory about the Dillon Gabriel situation and how I feel as if that they're not really going to bring in another quarterback. I think that they're just blowing smoke and mirrors up everybody's ass. And I think that they're full of themselves, bro, in Cleveland. I believe that this battle is going to be between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. And if maybe, a slim chance, maybe they might bring in Anthony Richardson.
But what one Browns insider said about Dillon Gabriel behind the scenes might explain why Cleveland could trade him sooner than people expect. We'll get to that in a second. To understand why these Dillon Gabriel trade rumors are suddenly everywhere, you have to look at what's been happening inside the Cleveland Browns quarterback room over the past few months. Because from the outside it might seem like a normal off-season conversation, but when you really start connecting the dots, it begins to look like something much bigger could be developing. The Browns entered this stretch of the offseason with a lot of uncertainty at quarterback, and that uncertainty has created the kind of environment where every comment, every report, and every small detail starts to matter more than usual. At the center of it all is the ongoing discussion around the Browns' starting quarterback situation. From what insiders have been saying recently, Cleveland may actually be preparing for a competition scenario, one where different options inside the building are evaluated closely before the season really gets underway. Some reports have suggested that the Browns could move forward with a situation involving Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders competing for control of the offense. And if that's the case, it raises an obvious question. Where exactly does Dillon Gabriel fit into all of this? Because just a short time ago, Gabriel was being discussed as a legitimate part of the quarterback conversation in Cleveland. There were moments where his name came up in interviews and press conferences, and some people around the organization even spoke positively about his potential. But lately, that tone has started to shift. Instead of conversations about development or opportunity, the discussion around Gabriel has started to focus more on roster strategy. And when analysts start using phrases like asset value or trade interest, that's usually when fans begin to pay attention. One of the most interesting points, brought up by several analysts, recently involves the way NFL teams sometimes handle trade situations behind the scenes. It's actually not uncommon for teams to publicly mention a player, praise their abilities, or
Listen, recently, Dillon Gabriel said that me and my colleagues in the sports world are entertainers and he's a competitor. Listen, nigga, I've been winning chips my whole life. What the fuck did you do at Oregon State? I'm waiting. But don't ever come for me or Shedeur Sanders. I will cock slap your ass.
But here's the part nobody is talking about yet. The Browns may not just be trading Gabriel, they might be doing it to fix another problem on the roster or highlight their potential right before a trade window opens. The idea is simple. By talking positively about the player, you generate curiosity around the league. Other teams start wondering if there might be an opportunity there. In other words, it's a way of quietly increasing a player's market value, and some people listening to recent Browns discussions think that it might be exactly what's happening with Dillon Gabriel right now. During recent conversations on Cleveland sports radio, analysts started discussing this possibility directly. They suggested that when coaches or executives casually bring up a player's name in interviews, it sometimes isn't random at all. Sometimes it's strategic. The idea being that if enough attention builds around that player, another team might eventually make a call. Now, of course, that doesn't automatically mean a trade is coming, but when those kinds of conversations start appearing around the same player over and over again, it definitely raises eyebrows, and in Gabriel's case, there's another factor adding fuel to the speculation. The Browns recently made roster moves that involved shifting draft assets around. In particular, Cleveland ended up moving a 5th-round draft pick as part of a previous deal. That move helped the team address a need on the offensive line, but it also left them without that extra pick moving forward. So now some observers believe the Browns might be looking for ways to regain that lost draft capital. And if that's the goal, moving a quarterback asset could be one of the most realistic paths to making that happen. That's where Dillon Gabriel's name enters the conversation again. Because when teams evaluate trade pieces, they typically look at players who have potential value but may not currently be locked into a starting role. Players who still carry upside, but might not have a clear path to playing time on their current roster. Right now, Gabriel seems to fall into that exact category. And that leads to another important detail that's been discussed by analysts. Over the past stretch of time, Gabriel hasn't been seen on the field as much as fans expected. After dealing with injuries, his presence in the public football conversation slowed down significantly. There haven't been many recent opportunities to showcase what he can do in the NFL. That kind of situation can sometimes create a difficult reality for players. Because when a team is evaluating roster decisions, availability and opportunity matter just as much as potential. If another quarterback begins to take control of the narrative or the depth chart, the rest of the room can shift quickly. And right now, there's the sense that the Browns' quarterback hierarchy might already be starting to change. Which brings us to the next major development in this story, because, according to multiple discussions happening around Cleveland media circles, one quarterback in particular may have quietly moved ahead in the internal conversation. And if that's true, it could be the moment that officially turned Dillon Gabriel into something else entirely inside the Browns organization. Not a future starter, but a trade asset. And once that possibility enters the picture, the entire situation starts to look very different. Asterisk now.
This season has always been about the Cleveland Browns getting as much information about the quarterbacks that they have under contract so they can make an informed decision about how they move forward with that position in 2026. We got to keep in mind, Deshaun Watson is entering the window to return to practice. He's going to be in the mix in the second half of the season.
This is hilarious. So let me tell you all y'all out there, as much as they hate on Shedeur Sanders, they can't stand Deshaun Watson. They may think that Shedeur Sanders is flashy and they don't want to see him get out. But if you think they don't want to see Shedeur Sanders play, they don't want to look at Deshaun Watson. The level of vitriol that pops in people's head when they see Deshaun Watson is at the highest degree.
Now this is where the story really starts getting interesting, because once analysts began questioning Dillon Gabriel's place in the Browns quarterback room, the conversation quickly shifted from quiet speculation to full-blown trade rumors. And a big part of that came from comments made by people who closely follow the Browns every single day. On Cleveland sports radio, analysts started discussing the quarterback hierarchy inside the building, and one thing became clear from those conversations. The coaching staff may already have a different direction in mind when it comes to the future of the position. During one of those discussions, analysts openly debated which quarterback the Browns might prioritize moving forward, and when they looked at how the season ended and how the organization might evaluate things internally, one name kept coming up ahead of Dillon Gabriel: Shedeur Sanders. According to that discussion, the way the season wrapped up may have shifted how the coaching staff views the depth chart. Analysts suggested that Sanders could be entering the offseason with momentum, especially considering how he finished and the potential he showed late in the year. And if that evaluation is correct, then it changes the entire picture inside the quarterback room. Because if the Browns are preparing for a situation where Sanders is part of the primary competition with Deshaun Watson, then someone else in that room becomes the odd man out. And right now, many observers believe that player could be Dillon Gabriel. One analyst even pointed out something interesting about how new coaching staffs often approach roster decisions. When fresh coaches or coordinators come in, they tend to evaluate players based on what they see during the most recent stretch of games, not what someone was expected to be months earlier. In other words, the final impression matters a lot. If the staff believes another quarterback finished stronger, showed more promise, or simply fits their system better, they might naturally shift their focus in that direction. And that's exactly why the Gabriel situation is now being viewed differently. Because the moment analysts started saying that Sanders might open the offseason as the quarterback leading the conversation, it created a ripple effect. Fans started asking the obvious question: if Sanders and Watson are the main focus, what happens to Gabriel? That's when the trade speculation really started gaining traction. Several observers began pointing out that Cleveland might actually have a strategic reason to explore that possibility. Remember the 5th-round draft pick the Browns moved earlier? Teams always value draft capital, especially mid-round picks that can help build depth on the roster. So if Cleveland is looking for ways to recover that asset, moving a quarterback who still carries intrigue around the league could make sense. And here's where the timing becomes fascinating, because recently, there have been moments where the Browns publicly mentioned Dillon Gabriel during interviews and press conferences. At first, some people thought it was simply routine discussion. But now, analysts are wondering if those comments served another purpose in the NFL. It's a well-known tactic for teams to talk positively about players they might be open to moving, not in a dishonest way, but in a strategic one. By highlighting a player's strengths or mentioning them during media sessions, teams can subtly remind the rest of the league that the player exists as a potential option. It's basically a quiet signal, a way of saying if anyone is interested, the door might be open. One analyst even explained it in simple terms during a recent discussion. He said that sometimes the easiest way to manufacture trade interest is simply by talking about a player more often. If other teams hear the name repeatedly, curiosity starts building. Eventually someone makes a call. Now again, none of this guarantees that Dillon Gabriel will actually be traded. The NFL offseason is full of speculation, and situations can change very quickly. But if the Browns trade Dillon Gabriel for a 5th-round pick, did they just make a smart move, or are they about to regret it? But when you combine all the pieces together, the story starts to form a clear pattern. A quarterback room filled with uncertainty, a coaching staff potentially leaning toward different options, a team that recently moved draft capital and may want to regain it, and a player whose name suddenly appears in conversations about assets and value. Put all of that together, and it's not surprising that fans are starting to believe something could be happening behind the scenes. But the situation doesn't stop there, because while these Dillon Gabriel trade rumors were spreading, another surprising name entered the Browns' quarterback conversation. And that development might reveal just how unpredictable Cleveland's plans really are. Now here's where the situation takes another interesting turn, because while the speculation around Dillon Gabriel continues to grow, another storyline started circulating around Cleveland that shows just how unpredictable this quarterback situation really is. During a recent discussion, analysts brought up the possibility of the Browns at least exploring other quarterback options outside of the building. One name that came up during that conversation was Kyler Murray. Now, to be clear, this wasn't presented as a confirmed move or anything close to that. It was more of a discussion about how NFL teams approach opportunities when a talented quarterback might become available. But the fact that the topic even came up tells you something important about the Browns' current situation. Right now, Cleveland appears to be leaving every possible door open. During the radio conversation, analysts explained that teams in the Browns' position often investigate every potential quarterback option, even if the chances of actually completing a move are small. It's part of the process teams go through when they're trying to make sure they're putting the best possible roster together. One analyst made the point very clearly: when a quarterback with a Pro Bowl background or high experience becomes available, even if it's just a rumor, teams at least make a call. They check the situation, talk to agents, and evaluate whether there's any realistic scenario where it could work. That doesn't mean that the Browns are planning to make a move like that, but it does show how wide open the quarterback conversation still is. And when a team is actively exploring multiple possibilities, it often leads to roster changes somewhere else in the depth chart. That's why the Dillon Gabriel rumors continue to make sense to many observers. If Cleveland is truly focused on evaluating Watson, giving Sanders opportunities, and possibly exploring outside options, then the quarterback room could become crowded very quickly. And in situations like that, teams usually have to make decisions about which players fit into their long-term plans. That's the reality of the NFL. Roster spots are valuable, draft picks are valuable, and front offices are constantly balancing both. Some analysts believe that if the Browns can turn Gabriel into a mid-round draft pick, especially something like a fifth-round selection, it would be a move that helps them recover the draft capital they recently gave up. From a purely strategic perspective, that type of move could make sense, but there's also another side to this story, because not everyone is convinced the Browns are ready to move on from Gabriel just yet. Some fans believe that the rumors might be getting ahead of the actual situation. After all, Cleveland hasn't officially announced any intention to trade him, and in the NFL, things can change very quickly once off-season workouts and training camp begin. Quarterback competitions evolve. Injuries happen. Depth suddenly becomes extremely important. That's why situations like this remain fluid for a long time. Still, the pattern of comments, discussions, and analyst speculation has definitely created a new narrative around Dillon Gabriel's future. A few months ago, the conversation was about his potential role in Cleveland's offense style. The conversation has shifted to whether he might be wearing a different uniform before the season even starts. And when that kind of shift happens in the NFL rumor mill, it usually means something behind the scenes has at least sparked the discussion. The Browns themselves haven't fully revealed their hand yet, but based on the way insiders are talking, it's clear that the quarterback situation in Cleveland is far from settled. There are still questions about Watson. There's a growing curiosity about Sanders and how the organization views his future, and there are whispers about how the front office might manage its roster assets moving forward, which brings us back to the original question that started this entire conversation. Did the Browns accidentally reveal that Dillon Gabriel might be on the trade block? Or is this just another case of the NFL rumor cycle taking a small detail and turning it into a massive storyline? Right now, nobody outside the Browns building knows the full answer. But one thing is certain, as the offseason continues and teams start making moves, the Dillon Gabriel situation is definitely one to keep an eye on. Because if Cleveland suddenly pulls the trigger on a trade, a lot of people are going to look back at these early signs and realize the clues were there all along. And now the real question from Browns fans is simple. If the team does move Dillon Gabriel for a draft pick, would that be the right decision? Or could Cleveland end up regretting letting him go? Let me know what you guys think. Asterisk, and honestly, this whole situation just shows how quickly things can change in the NFL. One moment a quarterback is being talked about as part of the future, and the next moment analysts are already discussing whether he could be used as a trade asset. That's just the reality of the league. Teams are always thinking about value, roster balance, and draft capital. For Dillon Gabriel, the next few weeks could end up being extremely important. If Cleveland truly views him as a valuable trade piece, we might see a move happen faster than fans expect. But if the Browns decide to keep him around for competition, then the quarterback battle in Cleveland could become one of the most interesting storylines heading into the season. And let's be real, Browns fans have seen how unpredictable this team's quarterback situation can be over the years, so nothing should surprise anyone at this point. But here's the big question I want to hear from you guys. If the Browns actually trade Dillon Gabriel to recover a draft pick, do you think that's a smart move for the team? Or could Cleveland end up making a mistake by letting him go before really seeing what he can do? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this is one of those situations where fans are completely split. And if more news drops around the Browns quarterback room, we'll definitely be talking about it.